What song did you request to be played at your funeral that saved your life? The doctor said 3 weeks, maybe 4 if I was lucky. Acute myeloid leukemia, aggressive, terminal. I was 32 and planning my own funeral. I sat in my apartment staring at my Cubs poster. Been a fan my whole life. My dad used to say being a Cubs fan taught you how to handle disappointment, how to keep hoping when hope seemed stupid. I thought about what song I wanted at my funeral, and it came to me immediately. A Dying Cub Fan's Last Request by Steve Goodman. If I was going out, I was going out as a Cubs fan. I called my best friend Morgan. I need you to find the album it's on. Affordable Art, the original pressing if you can. Play it at my funeral. Morgan's voice cracked. Don't talk like that. Promise me. I promise. Morgan tore through every record store in 3 states, but came up empty. The 1983 pressing of Affordable Art didn't exist anymore. Or if it did, nobody was selling. I watched him from my hospice bed getting more desperate, showing up with dark circles under his eyes and hands shaking from too much coffee. Any luck? I'd ask, and he'd shake his head without saying anything. 10 days in, I told him to stop. It's just an album, man. You don't have to kill yourself looking for it. It's not just an album, Morgan said. You asked me to do one thing. I'm doing it. Day 12, he found a lead. A collector in Madison, Wisconsin had posted about his Steve Goodman collection on an online forum. Morgan sent him a message explaining the situation, and the collector, Bob, responded within an hour. I have Affordable Art, original 1983 pressing, but I need to know why it matters. Morgan told him everything over email. My diagnosis, the 3 weeks I had left, the Cubs, and how a dying Cub fan's last request was the perfect funeral song. Bob's response came the next day. I'll give it to you, but you have to come to Madison. I won't mail it. Some things are too important to trust to the postal service. Morgan didn't think twice. He got in his car at 5 in the morning and drove the 5 hours to Wisconsin. He texted me from the road saying he'd found it and was on his way to pick it up. I was too weak to type back much, so I just sent a thumbs up emoji. Morgan arrived at Bob's house around noon, and Bob answered the door immediately, like he'd been waiting. Morgan? Yeah, thanks for doing this. Bob opened the door wider. Come in. Before I give you the album, I need to tell you something about Steve Goodman. Morgan stepped inside and froze. The living room looked like a museum with every wall covered in Steve Goodman albums, posters, framed articles, and photos. Multiple copies of Affordable Art hung in frames on one wall, each showing different cover conditions. You're a serious fan, Morgan said. Bob walked to a shelf and pulled down a photo of Steve Goodman on stage in the mid-70s with a guitar in his hand. Steve had leukemia, Bob said quietly. Most people don't know that. Bob set the photo down and turned to face Morgan. Steve was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia in 1969 when he was only 20. Doctors gave him a few months, maybe 6 if he was lucky. Morgan went cold. That's what Ben has, acute myeloid leukemia. Bob nodded. Steve went to Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York for experimental chemotherapy. Nobody thought it would work. He underwent treatment every 2 weeks for years while still performing. Most people never knew because he kept it private. Bob walked to a bookshelf and pulled down a thick biography with Steve's face on the cover. Clay Eel's biography documents everything, including the medical treatment. Steve lived 13 more years after that diagnosis. He died in 1984, but the treatment had worked for over a decade. 13 years? But they told him months? Morgan asked. The experimental protocol at Sloan Kettering saved his life. Page 247 has the details. The specific protocol, the doctor's names, everything. Morgan pulled out his phone and dialed Dr. Bennigan, my oncologist. There was a musician named Steve Goodman who had leukemia in 1969. He got experimental treatment at Sloan Kettering and lived 13 years. I need you to look into this. Dr. Bennigan was quiet. What kind of leukemia? Acute lymphoblastic. The book says he was treated with an experimental protocol. That's different from acute myeloid, but let me look into this. I'll call Sloan Kettering and see what I can find about the protocol. Morgan looked at Bob, who was watching with tears in his eyes. Thank you. You might have just saved my best friend's life. The treatment worked. Dr. Bennigan enrolled me in a trial at Sloan Kettering using an updated version of Steve Goodman's protocol. 2 years later, I'm in remission, and the Cubs finally won the World Series in 2016. Steve Goodman died in 1984, thinking they never would. His story gave me enough time to see what he couldn't.